Counterparty management works just a little differently than employee management. Rather than selecting a license level, we're asked to select a type because we can set up our counterparties by type. So you could say, I've got a medical provider, I've got a vendor or a goods provider. This is an internal customer. This is a customer versus a vendor. Whatever the case might be, we can configure those. System admins can configure those and have as many as they need. The beautiful things about types, just like with contracts and requests and solicitations, is that, and we're going to look at this toward the end of today's session, is that we can set up fields by type. So we can say, oh, you know what? A customer of ours, we don't need to track the exact same information that we would for a vendor supplying items to us, and we can take care of that by fields by type. But you're going to go ahead and select the counterparty type and be taken to, lo and behold, its ad screen, which I'm sure is familiar to you by now. There are a couple of really handy features on the counterparty ad screen, though, that I always like to highlight. So out of the box, there are only two pieces of required information: company name and active. Active in this case works a little differently than it does in most of the other areas in CobbleStone. If a company is set to not being active, that simply takes that counterparty from the list of counterparties when we're making new records. So if you've ceased doing business with ABC Corp, you said, nope, ABC Corp is no longer active, a new contract could not be assigned to ABC Corp. It doesn't even appear for your end users. Active would make it appear in that list. So that's a big difference in active, so keep that in mind too. And of course, as I mentioned, company name, it's pretty self-explanatory. So you would want to make sure that you're populating it when you're adding it. But keep in mind, you could always come back to the details screen and edit the active field to say, oh, you know what? We were doing business with this organization, but things have changed. We're not feeling so good about them. So we're no longer doing business with them. So I'm going to flip them to not active. You could start typing in the counterparty name, the vendor or customer, and it runs through Google. Once you've found your item, it takes the information it can from Google and Google Maps. So it takes the company name, the address, and even down to things like the latitude and longitude for plotting it on a map. It is incredibly useful rather than filling in every single little thing by hand. I love this integration, but it's not one you necessarily have to use. You could always do it from scratch. But once we save our counterparty, once again, we're taken to a details screen. Editing works the exact same way as we've looked at, so I'm not going to beat that dead horse. But I do want to briefly talk about some of the options we have on the side menu. These are really handy. Company contacts, the first one that I've got picked out on the far left. That takes you to a subtable further down the page. And this is very useful for listing all of the major points of contact at this company. This can come in incredibly usefully if we're talking about the document collaboration add-on module that we'll look at in the future. Makes life so simple that way. Files and attachments. This works just like it does on our employees and contracts, but you can click that as a shortcut. It takes you down the page. View contracts. This is actually going to take you to a different page. View contracts says, okay, what are all of the contracts in CobbleStone that have been held with this particular company? So in this case, 456 Laundry. I could see all of their contracts on one page. whether they're active or expired or pending or on hold, whatever their status might be. I can see all of the business that we've done with 456 Laundry. And then finally, if we move down a little further, rate this company. Now, not everybody uses this, not everybody finds it useful, but it is one more tool in your toolbox that you can utilize. So you can place ratings for this company based on different sets of criteria over time to say, yes, this is a company that's definitely worth working with. Or, ooh, you know what? Their scores aren't looking so hot. Maybe we want to find a different vendor. So very, very useful there. We've already talked about a couple of these subtables, so I'm actually going to start from the bottom and work our way up. So contacts, as I mentioned, this is a subtable. That means I can have multiple line items that are related specifically to this one counterparty record. You can see I've got 2 contacts in here, got a good bit of information. I could continue to add them. I can view and delete if someone leaves, whatever the case might be. Files and attachments. We've already talked about this on employee records, and it works identically. But we've got one more table down here that we didn't mention, and that is additional addresses. This can be incredibly useful for if you have the same company that works out of different physical locations, and your contracts might be with those different physical locations. It means you don't have to have multiple copies of that counterparty. You could have just one for 456 detergent, but they have 7 different addresses that you could work with and go, that's still 456 detergent. I can come in this record. I can select that address. No problem. So it cleans up. It helps organize things a little bit. One more thing about vendors before we move on and try to jump into your system. And this is completely optional, but we do optionally allow counterparties to register for use in your CobbleStone on their own accord. Now, system administrators, we have control over the fields that we display and how this flows, but this can absolutely save your end users time by not having to enter every single contract or company manually. So we could invite vendors to come to this page, and it's just going to be your URL with that .cobblestonesoftware.com, and rather than /core/, it's /gateway/. So someone comes in to click create new account, they fill out that form, they continue, they submit, and then one or more users in your organization gets an alert that essentially says, hi, a new customer just tried signing up. You want to take a look at their information and approve them to come on into CobbleStone that we can do business with them in the future? Not that they're actually logging into CobbleStone, but you've got access to their information in CobbleStone. Or do you want to reject them because we are absolutely never, ever, ever going to do business with them? You've got complete control over that too. So again, it can be a really nice time saver. Because we need to go to our Manage Setup menu. And in here, we need the second option, Departments/Business Units. So as you can see, every system comes out of the box with a handful of incredibly common departments. But let's go ahead and add a new one. So on the side menu, I want you to click Add Department Record. It's the top option on the side menu. There you go, perfect. As you can see, we just need to give it a name. So if you want to call it test, we can. If you want to give it a legitimate name, you can do that too. That is fine. You can ignore the entity field. That's legacy information. Don't even worry about it. So the only other thing you need to do is scroll on down and click Save and Continue.
So this department ID is auto-generated one, right?
You got it exactly. You've got it exactly. Because every item, all these items in CobbleStone really come down to the backbone of it, that it's a relational database. So every item we build gets a different ID. So that's all it took. Now you've created test department. If you wanted to edit it or you wanted to delete it, you could click View, and you've got a couple options on the side menu, or you could use the pencil to update the name from test department to whatever you might happen to need.
Okay. So this is the top level entity. So where we can add employees here.
You've got it.
Who can access this?
Yes, exactly. So again, I want you to keep departments in the back of your mind for a while with this, because we're going to be talking about how we're assigning them to employees, how we assign them to contracts and other records, and how they play with user permissions. But that's all it takes to create a department.
Yeah.
So let's head up to the top navigation menu. And this time I want to go to the employees menu.
So this is employees menu.
There we go. So personally speaking, I always start with the employee list. I like starting with the list to know that I'm not reinventing the wheel. Now, I can say with absolute certainty what we're going to create is not reinventing the wheel, because we only have the default contract admin account here right now. But I want to go ahead and add a new employee. And we're going to make an employee record for you or for one of your colleagues who's on the call today. So you're going to select the license level. My recommendation for everyone on these calls is to keep them as admins.
Okay. What is the super and standard?
Oh, great question. So the different license levels really can insist on what information or what permissions can be assigned. So I look at this like a bucket, and the read-only bucket is the smallest one. They have the fewest permissions that they could be assigned. The standard bucket is a little bit more. It includes everything from read-only plus. Super is an even bigger bucket. It has a few more things. And then admin has the most. But keep in mind two things. One, to make a system administrator, they have to have an admin level license. But once they are a system administrator, they get even more than what a standard admin would have. So a system admin is effectively a god in this system. They can do whatever they want to in here. So let's go ahead. We're going to continue with an admin and continue to the employee add. Again, so what we can go ahead and add you. We can add one of the other folks who's on the call today. Whatever makes you happy here.
Okay. So the title.
Yep. So title is optional, but we do want to assign you to a business or department unit.
Is it accounting, finance, legal, administration? So each has these are predefined, right? So we created a test department.
But yeah, you could throw it into test department just as easily. So we can make as many or as few departments as you need.
Yeah. So once created, I can continuously add multiple departments also, correct?
You can, absolutely. Because you have the permissions to do so, you could add a brand new department right here on the fly with that blue plus.
Well, this is similar to what we did previously, department list.
It is, yeah. You're accessing the same ad screen from a different location, that's all. But it is effectively the same.
So once I added here the department, and another department I want to add to the same employee, it is not possible here, right?
Great question. It is possible, but not right here. So the way I think about this, and the wording might not be perfect, but I think about the one we're assigning here as this person's quote-unquote primary department. But we can absolutely add more departments to a user. So we'll go ahead, we'll fill out the rest of this ad screen.
So everything is optional.
Yep, everything else is optional, but let's give it a username. You know,
Yeah.
a very common convention is just first initial, last name. And then password, you can set up to be whatever you want right now. Okay, so now we definitely do want to make you a system admin. So we're going to take that field and we're going to set it to yes. Delegate
Really
tasks
good.
to, we're going to dive into that field a little bit later. I don't want to touch onto that too much until we start talking workflow. We don't need to force your password on reset on login because you're the one who's logging in and you just set it.
Yeah.
So we'll want to set the regional setting. Honestly, this is one that we can technically take off of being required, or we can leave it there and continue to run through the list. But it is a pretty lengthy list.
So any language, new language, if we added here in this list, then we need to support.
Oh, very fair question. So no. So as you can see right now, language is separate from regional settings. Regional settings work in two ways. One, it's how like dates and whatnot are displayed. So, like personally speaking, despite being in the US, I don't like being there because I write my dates day dash month dash year. So I would need to change my regional setting to, you know, UK or something like that. But it also impacts non-working days. And then language, it's going to default to English, but as you can see, we do have some of the other out-of-the-box items there. And then we want to make sure this user is marked as active. So let's head down a little bit.
Yeah.
We're going to active user.
Yeah. So this language, if I change it to something else, Spanish, then the metadata will change, right? Not the real data entered by
Right.
user.
The field names and the menu headers, those would change,
Yeah.
but the metadata inside the field, so yes, English United States, English, based on what we're looking at right now, that would stay the same.
Okay.
So now we'll save and continue. And you've just built your first user.
Yeah.
So from now, if you want to log in with that account rather than the contract admin one that you're in right now, you could certainly do that. And my recommendation is when you have a few moments of downtime, create accounts for the other two folks who are on the call right now. That way you can all log in the near future.
Sure. Yeah.
So it is taking a moment, especially because it's saving for the very first time. So it's loading up that details page. It's got to take everything into cache. There we go. So there's your user
So
record.
this is the details record, yeah.
Yep, so that's your details screen, and it looks almost exactly like your ad screen. Now, I was going to save this for later, but because you did ask about multiple departments, on the side menu, I want you to click Manage Permissions.
Manage permissions.
And we're going to dive into all the details in this page in the next one, but for right now, I want you to scroll down a couple of boxes. And right here at the bottom of our screen right now, that's where you could start assigning additional departments. Now, the primary department does not reflect on the list on the left. If you add it there, that's A-OK. If you don't, that's A-OK too.
It's automatically added. Okay.
Right. Now, keep in mind too, as a system administrator, you have access to everything. It doesn't matter what department you're a part of. You have access literally to everything inside of CobbleStone.
Yeah. So it gives me, like at the time of view permissions, right? Like for this account, anything I want to do with in the accounts department, any special permissions, any special documents to view or edit, then these departments, whatever the assigning, will comes into picture, correct?
Absolutely, yes. Yes, you've got it spot on.
Okay.
Again,
So
with the
as
exception of us as system administrators, because we can access everything.
Okay. Okay.
Our list. No, that's all right. It's so
Yes, this
similar
is
to creating employees. So the only one that's populated in there right now is CobbleStone Software. I want you to click View Details, just so you can see what the detail screen and kind of by extension the ad screen would look like for one of these. So the only thing that's required right out of the box are company name and active. And as you can see, they're both already populated. There's also a bunch of optional information that's been populated in here as well.
so this logic cell, the URL here,
Mm-hmm.
it's a special workspace created for this company
Exactly.
in this
Yeah.
cloud.
This is your company's account, and other organizations when they've licensed it, it wouldn't be trials.cobblestone software.
Yeah,
It would be cobblestone.software / whatever their organization is / core /.
got it. Yeah.
So, like I said, companies very, very similar to employees.
Yeah.
The biggest difference is how that active field works.
Okay, this active field. Yeah.
Yep. So, how are you feeling about your companies and your user records? They make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Yes.
Great, great. Yeah. So while we're offline, if you get the opportunity, make a couple more user accounts for the admins
Okay.
in your environment, and we can start working with all of you doing that the next time. So if it's all right, I do want to change gears a little bit. We're going to go back into my deck.